opposition, we have Chimak. The motion before the House is this House believes that in times the government has the right to censor the media in times of natural disaster.
Censor the media in times of natural disaster. I'd like to call the Prime Minister to open the case for today's debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we're debating under the motion, this House believes that government has the right to censor the media in the time of natural disasters. And let me begin by explaining to you exactly what happens when there is a natural disaster, such as earthquakes, tsunamis, or any other natural disasters. So basically what happens when there is a natural disaster is that people are dying and people are suffering. And what medias actually do is that because of the characteristics of media that want more attention from people, that wants people to watch their TV channel, they want to make people read their newspaper, they actually use more graphic images or graphic information to attract people into reading or watching their channel or a newspaper. So what we believe is that in the cases of natural disaster where it is a national emergency, these medias are not helping to solve the problem. So basically what they're doing is provoking the public, and also we believe that by the media, the social order is lost, which is not helping the problem. So I'd like to first define today's motion. This House believes that government has the right to censor, meaning that the government has a choice to do so when it is necessary, and censor the media, meaning that they can censor TV, newspaper, internet, or from the graphic images or the information that actually provoke people to panic, especially with the wrong information and information that have not been proved or found to be true. What the government is trying to do with by pushing this motion is that we want to minimize the harm from natural disasters and make sure that these people who are suffering from natural disaster can actually recover easily and minimize the harms of aftermath. The government has basically three arguments. First, we believe that because of the characteristics of media that wants to attract more people into watching their media, we believe that this throws down the social order. Secondly, we believe that in the time of natural disaster, government's efficiency and the speed in dealing with the situation is the most important factor. And by media actually provoking the public does not help government's efficiency. And thirdly, the Deputy Prime Minister will be talking about how the media can actually provoke people by using false information that actually undermines the social order that needs to be taken place in the times of natural disasters. So let me move on to the first argument. We believe that the characteristics of media is that they want to attract most audience, actually makes the media more graphic and more brutal. For instance, when people watch TV or newspaper or internet, you can see that TV channels are actually competing against each other on who watches their channel the most. So in order to do that, they use people's characteristics of people that people actually watch the most brutal or most graphic images that are more provoking to these people. So that means that media is actually using this to attract more audiences. So this means that whether the information that they put on the news or the internet is positive or negative, or is true or not, people, regardless of the truth, people are swept into the public and they start panicking. So when people start to panic, there's a whole crowd of people who are panicking that is just who are just not in the social order and are not cannot actually think rationally and start to be angry against the government or what government. Yes.
If those people see those horrific images and they believe that they need to do something about it, they will do more to do in terms of aid.
That could be true, but Madam Speaker, what we see is that when these people are in the natural disasters and they're in the situation, even though they see the people dying, they can't really help. So what we see is that when people see other people dying, we don't think that creates people to have give more aid, but rather people moving into panicking and also being more irrational. So because media uses the characteristics of people, that people tend to go for the more graphic and more provoking information, we see that this leads people into panic and undermines the government's role in this in the time of natural disasters. Secondly, we believe that government's role in being efficient in the time of natural disaster is undermined when people are panicking and the media is showing all these graphic images and information to these people. Basically, government's role is to protect people from harmful information that is provoking to the public and also to maintain social order so that people are calm and people can actually be in the safe situation. In the time when in the natural disaster, when citizens need to be calm, when the citizens are in panic, we see that in order for the government to take the necessary measure, it cannot happen because people are not being rational and people are not following the government. So even if the government does not have the perfect program to actually act upon, it is more easier to move and help people who are calm rather than angry mob of people who are actually panicking. So we believe that because at the time of natural disaster, where it is a national emergency, we believe that government's efficiency and speed in dealing with the situation is the most important factor. And that will be undermined when the media is provoking the public and provoking the people into panicking. So basically, what have I talked about today? I've talked about how in the time of natural disaster, where it is a national emergency, people need to be calm. And these medias who are actually provoking the public with graphic images and graphic information is not helping the problem because those people are influenced by the media and they will be panicking even more. As we can see in the the government's role is to make sure that these people are safe and to protect these people and allow these people to recover so that they can have a better information. And what we believe is that if the government does not censor the media at the time of natural disaster, we can't really minimize the harms, and also we can't really make sure that these people can recover easily and in a quick manner. So I'm proud to propose.
7 minutes, 23 seconds. Alright, the House thanks the Prime Minister. Would like to now move across the floor and recognize the first speaker from side opposition. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The 3 lines of reasoning from the government side were the following. Firstly, panic is not necessary. Secondly, media is going to abuse it. Thirdly, people cannot help. However, Madam Speaker, we say this is absolutely ridiculous, and from the opposition side, we stand strong and firm. The government don't have the right, in any circumstances, to interfere with the media, and that includes even in the terms, especially in the terms, in the context of the natural disaster. Before we go into any of the substantive speech, let's have some rebuttals on the 3 points that I introduced you with. Firstly, why panic is necessary in this particular context. They have told us that panic is not necessary because you're going to create this pool of angry citizens who will just panic and try to run away everywhere. However, Madam Speaker, yes, that may happen. We do concede that that is a fact. That's something that may happen. However, this is necessary. Why? Because when these people are not aware of this, not aware that there is a natural disaster that has a potential to happen. For example, they only focus on the area. They only focus on what happens after the natural disaster. What we say is the information should not be censored before even the natural disaster happens, as well as after. Why should it be not censored before? Because firstly, as in the case of, you would have seen the movie here and there, like what happened was, there was a huge earthquake that was about to destroy the whole beach was coming, and people were aware about it. People had warnings of these waves that they may lead to a huge natural disaster. However, what did media and what did government choose to do? They decided to censor this information and not let these people know, because they thought, as the government side has thought today, that panic was unnecessary and this was not going to happen. And they negated the very possibility that it was going to happen. And what happened in the end? Well, there was more damage because people were too calm, because people were too late in evacuating. That's the kind of damage that we say is more significant than the damage that they say from the people panicking. Second of all, the whole idea of people not being able to help. If people cannot help, Madam Speaker, why at status quo do we have phone numbers at the top corner of the television? Sending you text, one text, maybe like 10,001, is going to be a huge help for these people undergoing the harms of the aftermath of the natural disaster. That simply does not stand. Sit down. The third rebuttal I'd like to make is media's abuse. Yes, we do agree the media do want attention, are competing. However, why is this bad? They have not proven to us that why media is bad. However, I've told you from the very beginning that it is important to get people's attention. It is not a bad thing to get people's attention, and particularly this case of natural disaster, because the damages are so huge and cannot be cleaned, cannot outweigh the harms of the potential of panic that they're talking about and seem to be exaggerating. So there we see the priority. The priority should be people's safety over anything. Media can abuse it, whatever they want. Attention, fine. But why? Because it's necessary in this particular case. We care about the welfare of citizens and that they have decided to ignore. To go into my substantive arguments, we have 4 arguments today. Firstly, what is the media's role? Secondly, how not censoring anything does bring about change, social change. And third argument, my deputy leader of opposition, Changna, is going to talk about. Thirdly, what she's going to say is why there is a critical need of this missing information. And fourthly, she will also talk about how government can abuse it and why government abusing is more harmful than the media abusing it. So firstly, what is the media's role? I have 2 parts of the analysis here. Firstly, their role is they have the obligation to the public to be neutral, Madam Speaker. They cannot be influenced by any factor for 2 reasons. Firstly, because media is the very channel that connects our citizens to the real world, Madam Speaker, whether it be natural disaster, whether it be war, any full horrors of these disasters should be revealed because citizens simply have the right to know, and the government does not have the right to intervene. And secondly, media is an independent entity from the government. Media is not part of a government where the government can just play around and show things that they want citizens to believe. That is simply not true. The second part of the media, transparency. Why transparency is important. I've given you in my rebuttal why panic is necessary coming from these transparency. Not just after the natural disaster, but before. Any dangers, any signals to natural disaster as a critical information that the government wants to censor and that we see is unacceptable at status quo. We say no right whatsoever. So before going on to the next substantive rebuttal, yes.
Are you doing this case on the premise that we said before, on the status where the natural disaster is on the status of national emergency, where every nation is panicking and that the government is doing its best to solve this problem?
The question that the government have asked us, whether the government is doing the best possible to protect the citizens, if I do correctly, otherwise I'm going to move on. The second substantive argument, it does bring about social change, ladies and gentlemen. What happens if there is information missing? What we see at the status quo is these buildings collapsing, there's waters flooding everywhere, but that's all we see. We do not see the full horrors of the natural disaster that the government wants to censor. And why is the full horror not bad, particularly in this context? Because full horror is important to get the people to feel the moral imperative to help, ladies and gentlemen. Not just the information that something bad has happened somewhere around the world, but the actual pictures, the image, the powers of these images are the important factor in creating more moral imperative for these people to get out there and actually make change and actually help. Secondly, natural disasters, meaning people are desperate for help. They can any minimal amount of help that we can do is going to, well, that much of help that we can do is going to be everything to these people, ladies and gentlemen. They need every penny, every bit of food that we can provide them with, and the government side cannot risk that potential and just negate, and people cannot help. Ladies and gentlemen, what have I told you today? Two things. What is media's role? Neutrality and transparency. On one, transparency is particularly important in this context. Second thing I told you about, why does this not censoring and providing the full horrors of these natural disasters do bring about change, as the government side have decided to ignore. And most importantly, why panic is important in this circumstance, and the risk of people panicking is significantly lower than the damage that that unpreparedness brings. Therefore, we're very proud to oppose.
You spoke 7 minutes and 21 seconds.
Alright, thank you, Opposition Leader. I'd like to now call on the second speaker from side government to continue their case.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I move on to my substantive case on this argument, I want to clarify some of the things that should be clarified before we further debate on this kind of messy debate. Now, what my PM has exactly mentioned is that this status of when we try to censor the media is when the government calls for national emergency due to a natural disaster. Meaning that when this happens, this is when this natural disaster affects the whole nation, and that the government calls for more unity within the nation, and that this is different from just normal natural disasters that may happen meaning that the whole nation is affected, and that the whole nation may be in the status of panicking because this natural disaster is affecting the whole nation. So if we want to hear more about engagement on this definition, meaning that it's on the status of national emergency. Furthermore, I want to go on the rebuts of the argument. Now they say that censorship will not, no censorship will bring change within the nation itself. No, ma'am. Now they talk about neutrality and transparency. But the thing is that, ladies and gentlemen, the problem is at this time when the whole nation is panicking, ladies and gentlemen, there is no time where we can actually give out good and correct information. But the thing is, at this time where everyone's in a panic moment, where everyone is in danger and everyone is in some panicking, bad information is worse than no information, because the fact that, although I'll go on with my constructive argument, bad information can give wrong information, so that it may lead to unnecessary deaths within the situation. No, ma'am, sorry. Now another thing was that it's gonna that it's going to bring more aid to people about, for example, they gave out the numbers and so forth. But the thing is that we're not censoring those numbers where it calls out for thing. But what we're censoring is that the reason why we're censoring is because of the fact that the target of the media, why we're censoring our media is because of that the majority of the people who watch this media are white people, and that we want the government to show, give the right information to our people. The purpose of a media is not to show other people in the world. Since it's the government, our media's purpose is to give the right information and the right timing to our people who are in danger and who are facing this crisis. Yes.
Sir, so can you tell me what is the right information and what is the bad information?
Well, the bad information, I'll go on with the argument. For example, would be like, for example, after an earthquake, when everything is it's all shaky, buildings shaky, these are minor media might call out saying that you guys can come out right now and you guys can be free. But the thing is that these information are information that the government has not confirmed, and that the government knows that it is not right. And if people listen to this, they're going to get provoked by this, and they will come out of their safety places and go freely. But the thing is that it's not safe yet. This is the part where the government has not been allowed yet, approved yet. So this is one of the examples of why we believe that there is time and there's a need for the government to censor the media. Now I'll go on with a substantive case of talking about why this removes chances of false information. Now, as I said before, we think that bad information is worse than no information. This is because of the fact that bad information, wrong information, unnecessary information can provoke unnecessary death, unnecessary damage to the media, and especially at a time where the whole nation is affected due to national security, national emergency, the government calls out. This is a time where we don't want to give more provocation, more chaos within society, because people tend to panic, because they feel danger within themselves. Now, good examples of false information would be like, for example, bad safety tips, bad analysis of the situation, and other ways and ideas that may provoke the people to do unexpected things that should not be done while in national emergency situations. So, we admit that not all information may be incorrect. There may be some good information, but the thing is that we want to take out the possibility, any chances of bad information coming on people and provoking the people, leading them to do unnecessary deaths, unnecessary actions that may endanger themselves even more. This is the reason, one of the reasons why the government believes that, because one of these actions may lead to massive damage such as massive damage that the government does not want, and we want to prevent this as much as possible. Yes.
Sir, because bad information and good information is still subjective, and this is an urgent situation. Do you think government has enough time to decide it is good information and the bad information?
The reason, when national disasters happen, at times of national emergency, government has to give out specific, they have this guideline set already what to do in national disasters. They can give out THBT ambassador, and they're more approved because they're already prepared in the beginning. Other than these minor media where they give out random information and media and information that was not approved or approved by the government, or which we don't even know if it's correct or not. This is a difference of why the government is trying to censor the media at times of national emergency and when they face natural disasters. So, what I've done today in this speech is that first, we want the opposition to engage more into a definition of a time where nothing is stable. Everyone's panicking because of the fact that this natural disaster has affected the whole nation, and that no one's really safe from it, and that and also we want to emphasize that the focus of the whole media that we try to censor is for the targeting the people within the people, because the media is not for like an advertisement for people to come for aid. The primary purpose of the media is to ensure the people that they ensure with safe information, good information, this information will not provoke them, will not provoke any more social chaos that we don't need at the CESCO, and also bad information that will lead to unnecessary actions by these people just because they saw some kind of minor information from the media. So, ladies and gentlemen, please consider the status of when we're debating here. We're debating in a time, again, as I mentioned before, that that there's a risk of panicking, and that government needs to give correct and safe information in order to deal with the situation as fast as possible. Thank you.
Ms. Bo, 6 minutes and 27 seconds.
Leader of Opposition, the House would like to now call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that it is in nature, if natural disasters happen, people panic. And not just the people who are involved in the natural disasters, but we say it is the responsibility of other citizens to also panic with them, to really give them the right kinds of aid, to give them and to really understand what is happening. And we believe panic is important because what does panic lead on to? If people panic in the situation that these bad things are happening and the government is not dealing with it well, then they pressure the government to do more things. They pressure in terms of these panic. So we think panic is essentially important. And what they have said is that the government cannot deal with this panic other than just censoring the media and saying you shouldn't let these information flow out to the people. We believe that the government should let this panic be solved and relieved by having effective policies on how to deal with natural disasters, not censoring the media and filtering what kind of images or what kind of information should flow out to the people in the first place. And actually, they said that what the positive or negative impact that we brought about should be somehow weighed by the government. However, what we say critically wrong in this analysis is that government should not be controlling what the effects of people will be brought about in the situation. They have no right, the government has no right to actually say, oh, this will be bringing about a positive impact, so we can give you this information. This is bringing about wrong impact in our idea, so we're not giving information. We say the media's role is to give the right information, the right kind of information, whether it will bring about good information, a good impact or bad impact. So we say the government has no standing here to interfere in this issue. And why is media trusted in the first place? Media is trusted because we believe that media is under no interference by the government or any other powerful entity. We trust it because we trust the media in bringing the information when media is one of the main ways that we get the information in the first place. So we believe once government steps in and says what is good or bad, that's the faults that we don't want to have in the first place. And another thing that they said was that somehow they will give bad safety tips to the people and it will be a bad thing. However, we say there aren't just one media channel in the status quo. There are other media channels also who can say no, that is the wrong safety tip. So we are proposing another safety tip. We think that is just totally not right. And another thing that they've assumed was that if the government doesn't confirm whether this is a good information or wrong information, then it is just wrong information if it doesn't go through government confirmation. We think that kind of premise is wrong also. So, and another thing, if the media, even in the status quo, if the media gives wrong information and if it impacts people wrongly in this situation because of wrong information, then the judicial system comes in and the court comes in to restrict the media from doing this, and they curb it in this way. What they have said was that even if something is happening around the world, even if these horrible things are happening around the world, they are not going to give it to the people. Even if it does exist, even if it is the right information, that's what they're talking about. So what I'm going to talk about in my substantive, first of all, is why this critical information should be available in all ways, and why it will be a missing link, and that would be critically harmful. So first of all, why is it harmful? We think when there isn't a flow of information that is logically together, and when the media starts to have these kinds of holes in the information because the government censored it, we believe that's when people start to interpret that's when people start to question, and that's when people start to distort what's going on. So we believe that's the wrong that we don't want to have. And then, if people don't get the real picture of what's happening, if people don't really understand what's happening because they don't get the flow of what is really happening because the media didn't report everything, then we believe people start to question even the government's effectiveness, even the government's policy in dealing with this. So first of all, when recently, in the terms of Haiti earthquake, the G7 countries said that they will take away the debts of Haiti government so that they can deal with the situation better. However, if people didn't get the severity of the situation and didn't get the whole picture of the situation, they would say, why are they taking away the debt? Why are they doing this kind of policy? They don't fully understand why this situation is happening. So then, people actually question the government imperative that will be bringing about harmful effects in the first place. And second of all, my argument will be about the government's possibility of abuse. We say natural disasters is critical in that, first of all, these things happen in the first place, in which the government could not effectively prevent this from happening. And second of all, there are situations in which government does not deal with it effectively in the second manner. So we say, how government reacts to the natural disasters should be another information that should be available to the people. However, once the government steps in to the situation and tries to somehow censor only the graphic images, but then they may lead on to not reveal the wrongdoings, not reveal the ineffective policies that the government is doing in dealing with natural disasters. And we think that is a critical thing that we don't want to happen. For example, when in terms of the US, when there is Katrina, the government did not effectively deal with it properly in that they didn't give good ways to evacuate and they didn't inform the people rightly. However, if the US government had the power to intervene in the media, and somehow weigh what they're going to show and what they're not going to show, obviously, because they are vulnerable, they think they don't want to release information that they have been doing ineffective policies. So we think that is another thing that we don't want to happen. And we think that also, if the government steps in this issue, what is the end? What about when there is a war? What about when there are other just ineffective policies of the government? It can lead to abuse in other areas of the media in which the government censorship will be higher, and they have no way on this slippery slope to stop the government from intervening in the situation. So, when we see the example of Italy, when this leader is trying to cut off all the information about bad things about their own government, that is the thing that when people don't really get the right access of information, and when people cannot really decide effectively about the government because they don't have the information in the first place. And also, the reporting of the journalists will be hampered because they don't risk anymore to find the right information because they know that the government may filter it and that the government may take away their job if they believe that it is of a threat. So we think the possibility of government abuse is great in this situation. So what we have told you is that the media is an independent entity in which they should be neutral, they should be objective, and their only objective is to give the right information to the people fully. And that is what they are about to do, and that's why we're very proud to oppose.
Speakers spoke 7 minutes and 31 seconds.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Guys, quiet down, please. Right, moving along, I'd like to now call upon the government whip.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Speaker and Mr. Speaker. Now, as the Whip Speaker, I'd like to first of all, before I go on to the classes of today's debate, I'd like to clarify what the opposition side have told us today. Now, they said that
how government is dealing with natural disaster is very important. However, we believe that this is a misunderstanding of what we have said. First of all, we have clearly shown in our first Prime Minister's speech that the only thing we are actually censoring is what actually provokes panic. They're talking about all the things like dealing with the information, dealing with what have actually happened in the country. What we're doing today is we show the images, we show that things have happened in a country. We show that, for example, like natural disasters have happened and how it affected the country. However, what we're not showing is how people panic and what provokes people to actually panic in the society. Now, also, second of all, they talked about the results. However, the results, the government, what they're doing to the country and what they're trying to do to reconstruct the country will show later on in the results that will happen in the later on map. Now, about the slippery slope they told us about, they told us about the war. However, Madam Speaker, if we believe that the war itself is the same as a natural disaster, and if it also provokes panic, we will do that again, we will censor that again. However, this is not to be said in today's debate. Today's debate is about the natural disaster, not about the war, and we believe that debate can go on in a later on debate. Now, first of all, before I go on to the clashes, I would like to give you an example of a good information and a bad information because they have actually questioned the question about the information. Now, I'd like to give an example. First of all, the good information that they have said will be, for example, IT having a problem and affected by the natural disaster. And we will show that they have actually problems. Second of all, the bad information will be saying things like saying that the family members of a certain place are actually all dead because that is what actually happened to one of my friends. One of my friends in Korea, he had a father that was in IT, and then the IT news portrayed that IT in specific constructors and also in specific buildings, those people have all died. And those examples are those that are bad information that provoke violence inside and provoke panic for the people, the family members. Now, I would like to go on to today's, what I found in today's debate. Now, I have found 4 clashes in today's debate. First of all, the actions the government will take. And second of all, the panic. And thirdly, the role of the media. And fourthly, people's understanding of the current situation. Now, first of all, the actions the government will take. Now, the opposition side comes up on the podium and says that if people see the horrible images, then the aid will suddenly go up. Now, first of all, the government, as a responsible government, they will try to do all the best that they can do to recover the economy, to reconstruct the buildings. What the panic does in this process, it actually deters those processes. It deters the speediness of the nation to recover, and therefore that is why we actually say no to the effects that actually have the panics inside people's minds. And therefore, we believe that the opposition side is completely misunderstanding and also saying about wrong things to us. Second of all, about the panic. Now, they said that the panic is necessary and the seeing full horror is very important. First of all, the point that the opposition side is misunderstanding is that they say we're not giving any information to the other people, we're not giving any information to the international world. However, what they have to understand in today's debate is in the first place of the definition, when we said that we will give the information, the basic information that people have to know. What we are doing is not giving the information that is unnecessary to the people, it only provokes panic to the people. Now, knowing the information, of course it is important, but the media is already doing it. And therefore, we believe that this is wrong.
And go on.
Yes.
What provokes panic is open to interpretation, and it can be interpreted in government's favor.
Okay, what they're saying is that the government is actually going to try to say what is panic and not. Now, what we are saying is that in cases of natural disasters and when the economy and also the nation itself is in a severe crisis, the government knows for the people, they will act upon the public goods, and also they will actually give the means so that the nation can recover in the fastest way. And that is what the government does, and therefore we believe in this way. And also, they talked about the seeing full horror is important so that the people will help. As I have told you, Madam Speaker, first of all, we give the basic information about the harms we got, and other people do help on the basic information. It doesn't mean that because you just give the basic information, the people will not help, and that if you get the whole horrors of the information, the people will not help. But it's actually that people do help in these situations. And second of all, even if that is true, The social order and the dealing fastly and also efficiently is most important in natural disasters and also when the security of the nation itself is in danger. And therefore, we believe that we believe in this way. Now, third of all, the third clash, the role of the media. Now, what they said is the media has an obligation to be neutral. Yes, they are neutral, but in the case, we have consistently said it is in the case of natural emergency, a national emergency and natural disasters. We're giving the basic information but censoring the unnecessaries, and therefore we believe that all of the arguments was based on the fact that we're not giving any information, however that is not true. Now, fourthly, about the people's understanding. They said that we need to understand what is happening. Now, we believe that knowing that the natural disaster has happened and that affected the country enough is the basic information that people need. The people does not need more information beyond that actually provokes the panic itself. And we believe that those information are unnecessary to understand the country itself. And second of all, they said that we should actually give pressure to the government. However, we believe that the natural disaster itself is enough for the government to worry about. Now, the government is himself is very panicked about the situation, and therefore, giving enough pressure is not to be standard. And they said that if the people don't understand, the people will question the government's ability and stuff. Now, number one, we would like to talk about the necessary evil. Now, the government doesn't do that for his own purpose or for his political goods. He does that because he knows that is best for the public good and that's best for the security of the people. He knows that will actually help him speedier the process that he is going through. And therefore, we believe that because it lessens his speediness, it is not to be portrayed in the media. Now, what have I said today? What have our team said today on today's debate? First of all, we talked about the power of the media, how the media itself is oriented to the profit of themselves, and because they want to grab the attention of others, they try to portray more about the significance of the disaster itself. Not only that, but also they portray the bad things about people and the bad things that happened and the things that are unnecessary for the people to know. And second of all, because of the efficiency to governments to recover their society, the speed is important. And thirdly, we talked about the provoking by using the false information. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to get into this mind that in a natural disaster, when the security is very harmed, it is very important for the government to do a speedy process for the recovery. And that is why I'm proud to propose. Thank you.
Speakers spoke 7 minutes and 50 seconds.
Thank you, Government Whip. I'd like to now invite the last substantive speaker from side opposition. We will recognize the opposition whip to present her speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I go on to the three issues of today's debate, first one being, what is the media's role? Second one, is panic really necessary in this situation? And thirdly, it will be about why censorship is harmful in this situation. So I have 4 rebuttals before I go on to this issue. They considered that censorship can lead to censorship in times of war. And they're considering to the fact that there is no end to the censorship. That there is because of this subjective interpretation of the government, that there can be no end to the censorship. And we want to mention one more time that what provokes panic and what's a bad information and what's a good information is a subjective interpretation. It's a deadlock, which is good and which is bad. How can you debate on that? It can be interpreted in government's favor, and that's why we are opposing this, because it can lead to higher possibility that government will abuse this. And they say later, ma'am, and they say the panic will actually cause the government to work worse, because if government does not deal with natural disaster well, then people will be criticizing them and the government's actions will be worsened. However, I say if they cannot deal with this situation, then they deserve the pressure. And because they deserve the pressure, they will work speedier and more efficiently. It's their role to fulfill. And fourthly, isn't it, they've talked to you about a personal example of a girl, this person's friend who had his father died from Haiti. But I want to ask you a question. Isn't it better to know that your father died in Haiti than to know that he went missing in Haiti? And they said, and she said it actually provoked violence in her friend. But how? How did it provoke violence in her friend that your father died? I understand that she's very sad, but I don't understand the situation here. So now I'll go into the first issue. What is the media's role? They give a picture of media as so eager to attract people, and yes, they may want to attract people, but they say that in the news they show even more graphic and even more the worst pictures to attract. But I want to ask you, so is the news, when the news broadcasts you what's happening in Haiti, is it a lie? No, they're broadcasting the truth. The arms that amputated, the people who are dying, and the thief and the villains who kill the people. No, it's not lie. No, it's not a graphic thing that the government, that some people have made, but it's the truth. It's the status quo. And secondly, they say it will lead to panic to people. But I say, in the time of natural disasters, people are already panicking. It's happening around you. So it's not really mutually exclusive. So it's not like they don't know they have the situation. And we've told you that the media's role is that firstly, it's neutrality. Because it's influenced daily life, it shouldn't be the government's puppet which tells you what to think by the government. And I say, even in the case of natural disaster, and especially in the case of natural disaster, no, you shouldn't be the government's puppet. And secondly, transparency. They say because of the panic, the news media shouldn't be transparent. But I say in this special circumstances, people desire the information that are true and right to them and uncensored, and we need them. Yes.
So who takes care of the damage that is done due to the incorrect and wrong information done by these minor medias? Who takes care of the damage?
So what do you mean by the wrong and incorrect information? There can be no wrong and incorrect information. I told you the girl who was amputated, she is amputated, Mrs. Chairman, the ladies and gentlemen. So let me talk to you about the second issue. Is panic necessary in the situation? We've talked to you that firstly, government efficiency and speed. They just said, oh, it will lead to panic, it will somehow lead to panic, so it's bad. No. How? In what case? And how it will undermine government's efficiency? They've just repeated their stance again and again, but they haven't showed how it will actually, panic itself will actually worsen the government's policy. And in my earlier speech, I've told you that pressure is actually beneficial for the government in this case because it actually pressures government to work more efficiently and speedily. And we've given you an example of in Katrina, panic is needed because in Katrina, the U.S., the president, George Bush, which he's been criticized because he wasn't fast enough on acting, the U.S. people knew. But what happened on Katrina? Why so many people died when they could have died so much significantly less? Because there wasn't panic. People didn't know that this was going to happen. And I'll tell you why panic is important. Why during the during natural disaster. They say during the natural disaster, if you undermine the situations of natural disaster, then it will not really let you evacuate faster. So I say it is very important for you to do that. And we've given you that social, in the natural disasters, social aid is very important. For example, we've said the government fund and all these things, yes, good. But what really counts is that all this money from the international society, all this money from the general people, common people, individual. Why is the CNN reporting every single story? Why is it reporting an individual case and showing you a baby whose head is cut off? Why doing that? Because it actually gives you a human-to-human touch that this is actually happening, and it will actually remind people more of the what's happening in the status quo. And thirdly, why censorship is harmful. We told you the government abuse, governments can abuse this situation, and people have the right to know if the government was effective in dealing with the natural disasters. For example, Haiti's people have the right to know if the Haiti's president are hiding in an airport. They have the right to know how Haiti's president is dealing with the situations because they won't pick him later. So what have I told you today? I've talked to you that media's role is to be neutral and transparency, and it shouldn't be a government puppet role. And secondly, the panic is necessary, especially in the circumstances of natural disaster. And thirdly, that censorship is harmful. Thank you.
Speakers both 7 minutes and 35 seconds.
Thank you very much. That wraps up all our substantive speeches. Let's now call upon the last speaker from side opposition. Ms. House would like to recognize the opposition reply speaker.
Madam Speaker, what the government had to do to win this debate was simple. They had to prove why this censored information and the harms of panic that the censored information creates is significant enough for the government to have absolute right over. However, they have failed to do this in 3 terms. Firstly, what we did, there was a comparative analysis of harms of this panic and the benefits of this panic. Secondly, what can people do with and without this censored information? And lastly, how far can the government step in the media's freedom of expression? So firstly, the analysis between harms of panic and benefits of panic. We have told you from the very beginning of my speech that the panic that false alarm creates, yes, there may be some panic that is unnecessary, but we've proved to you that is much less than the damage of unpreparedness. Damage that came about because there was no panic was much significant. So let's paint a more simple picture. What happens if there was a false alarm and people panicked and just stood around for a couple of hours? Maybe you broke somebody's leg in the process. That's the harm. That's the kind of harm that they're talking about, that panic brings. What kind of harm does not unpreparedness bring? It brings years of damage that financially, in terms of resource, in terms of people's psychology, rather than the couple of hours of jostling and maybe a couple of broken legs and people shouting at each other. That is the exact analysis that we were talking about, that they chosen to dismiss. And where does true panic come from, Madam Speaker? We have proven to you that panic comes from unpreparedness, the suddenness of this natural disaster, because this information, critical information that gets people ready, was missing from this censorship. And they have failed to prove why the damages of unnecessary panic from false alarm is much greater and significant enough to tear our arguments down. Second thing was, what can people do with and without the information? What can people do without this information? Yes, we do acknowledge that there are people helping at status quo. People are pressing phone numbers and people are giving aids, food aids and money aids, and taking their time to go to voluntary services. Yes, that is true, but we say that with the information that is censored, people have more, comparatively more imperative and more this is particularly important because, as I've told you, how important a small change in the amount of help that you give is a huge change through these people and natural disasters, and they have failed to prove why it does more, why the censored information creates less aid, provide people with less imperative to help that in that sense that they have failed. The third one, that they have failed. How far can the government step over the media? They have failed to prove that when they have failed to prove that the government is not simply a genius that absolutely knows what information is correct and critical in the circumstances. Government makes wrong choices, as I've clearly aligned to you in my first speech, because they decide to censor this critical information. People panic, and that's where the damage, that's where the harms come in the context of natural disaster. Another thing, they have assumed that just because this information is not confirmed by the government, it is not correct. That is not the case. That is a huge mistake that the government side have made. Government are not. The government are simply human, Madam Speaker. They make mistakes, and this mistake is the risk. This risk that comes from risk of danger that comes from this government mistake is hugely more significant in when it is mistaken than the false alarm that as we have proven throughout our debate. Another thing they have chosen to ignore. Why is the media abusing this is necessarily bad? We have told you, drawing attention, alerting people, getting people on their feet is an important thing in this particular context, Madam Speaker. Media's abuse is not a good thing, but is important in this particular context. That's what they have ignored. Therefore, very proud to oppose.
Thank you, opposition team. I'd like to now call upon the last speaker for this debate. The House would recognize the government reply speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and ladies and gentlemen. So, at the time of natural disaster, we believe that people need to stay calm. Let's say, for instance, in this room there is a fire. People start running for the door, and people start just trying to get out of here. Now, in the time of where there is panic in this room, we will see that people are tripping over. People are just trying to get away from the fire. However, Madam Speaker, if we see faculties actually leading us out and actually guiding us out, so that everyone can be out of this room safely and also quickly, we can see that we will have a better evacuation system and also minimize the harms that come from natural disaster and also the panic. So basically, what the government was trying to say is that in a natural disaster, it is a bigger scale of the fire that I just described. In the case of earthquakes and tsunami, you will see people dying on the street, and you'll see corpse near you, and this comes all unexpected. So what we will see is that people will actually panic, and people will there will be less social order in the country. So what we will see is that people are not calm, and they will start panicking. Now, the role that media plays when there is a natural disaster has to be understood from the characteristics of the media that I have provided you. Characteristics of media is, yes, they are supposed to be neutral, and they're supposed to show only the truth. However, ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that media is actually trying to attract more people and trying to make people listen to their media instead of other channel or other newspaper. So what we will see is that these medias will try to grab people's attention by using more graphic information that are unnecessary, which will only provoke the people's panic and will not allow the government to do its role by providing right measures and right guidelines for these people. What they have been saying, what the opposition was criticizing the government was that the government will just hide all the information and will not provide the citizens with enough information. But Madam Speaker, that is not what the government was trying to say. What the government was trying to say is that, of course, the government will try to protect its people and make sure that these people are safe. So what we're saying is that we don't need unnecessary panic and unnecessary graphic images that will only provoke people that will hinder the government from doing its role. We believe that government saving the society as a whole, protecting the society as a whole, and make sure that the whole society recovers is the most important factor. We believe that government has a duty to actually make sure that society as a whole recovers from the natural disaster when it is a national emergency. So basically, under that understanding, the government provided you with how the media can actually abuse the characteristics of media and make people into panic. And secondly, how it hinders the government's efficiency when government efficiency is most important factor. And thirdly, we have provided you how it can lead on to chances of false information that provokes the public even more. So, Madam Speaker, what we're trying to do is to minimize the harms from natural disasters, and also to make sure that these people can recover, and so that these people can move on to have a good environment to live in. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to propose.